In high-stakes hearing, a judge will consider whether to order an abortion pill off the market. A lawsuit filed in Texas challenges the FDA approval of medications used to terminate a pregnancy. The judge has been asked to halt access to one drug nationwide. And the Michigan Senate approved a bill to repeal the state's right to work laws in a major victory for unions and organized labor in the state, setting the state up to become one of the first in the country to overturn its right to work laws. Michael Jordan's Last Dance shoes could sell for $4 million. Sotheby's will begin taking bids for sneakers worn by the Chicago Bulls icon in Game 2 of the 1998 NBA Finals. And for perspective, last February, 200 pairs of limited edition Louis Vuitton and Nike Air Force One sneakers sold for $25.3 million. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders has signed legislation making it easier to sue providers of gender-affirming care for children, a move that could effectively reinstate a block ban on such care. The new law, which won't take effect until this summer, would allow anyone who received gender-affirming care as a minor to file a malpractice lawsuit against their doctor for up to 15 years after they turned 18. Under current Arkansas law, medical malpractice claims must be filed within 2 years of an injury. Payments of $5 million to every eligible Black adult, the elimination of personal debt and tax burdens, guaranteed annual incomes of at least $97,000 for 250 years, and homes in San Francisco for just $1 a family. These were some of the more than 100 recommendations made by a city-appointed reparations committee tasked with the thorny question of how to atone for centuries of slavery and systemic racism. San Francisco Board of Supervisors, hearing the report for the first time yesterday, voiced enthusiastic support for the ideas listed, with some saying money should not stop the city from doing the right thing. During its most recent hearing, the California Reparations Task Force voted to recommend reviving a modern version of the Freedmen's Bureau, an all-encompassing agency created in 1865 to assist previously enslaved Black people to administer any benefits related to reparations in the state of California. The 9-member California Task Force, during a public hearing earlier this month in Sacramento, during that hearing, the task force agreed to recommend a state agency called the Free Affairs Agency that would work similarly as the Freedmen's Bureau. You are listening to Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In my first hour, I'm joined by two brilliant contributors, Professor Calvin John Smiley, author of Purgatory, Citizenship, Reentry, Race, and Abortion, and University of Central Florida, for now, Professor Larry Walker. Also in this hour, KBLA Justice correspondent Dion Raymond joins me for our comprehensive gavel-to-gavel coverage of the federal bribery trial of the United States of America versus Mark Ridley Thomas, an LA City Council member. And in my second hour, I'm joined by civil rights attorney Connie Rice and retired LAPD sergeant and law enforcement expert Cheryl Dorsey. We go all in on the elusive concept of community policing. This concept is back in the news after an Atlanta public safety training center, known by its opponents as Cop City, was attacked by 23 protesters who have been charged with domestic terrorism. The city said the training center will support high-quality, community-oriented policing, while protesters say the planned facility will increase the militarization of law enforcement. My experts weigh in. But before I bring my guest on, here's what I'm thinking in real time. Yesterday was Equal Pay Day, a day that reminds us of how much women have to work in order to earn the same amount of money as men. In 2021, Black women in the United States earned just 67 cents for every dollar that men made. And Hispanic women were paid 57 cents for every dollar. See, the gender pay gap amounts to big losses in income, not just for individual women, but for their families too. The gap constrains women's ability to build financial security over time and increases the risk that they will need to take on debt just to cover basic expenses and emergencies. The effect of lower wages during a woman's career also will result in a much smaller Social Security check in retirement. In real terms, today's gender pay gap can mean a loss of nearly, get this, $1 million for Black and Latino women and their families over a 40-year career. This means women of color would have to work to 80 or 90 years old beyond our life expectancies to just catch up. Now, y'all know I think this is some unadulterated BS. And the reality is, no matter how often we acknowledge equal pay day, things are never going to change in this country until we come to grips with the fact that the U.S. patriarchal system that provides unequal opportunities for women at every point of our education, training, and career choices is fundamentally designed to sustain a hierarchical structure where men are at the top, and for all of our successes and advances, the reality is in this patriarchal system, women are at the bottom. Now, I need all the men listening and watching this program to come clean. I need y'all to get real, acknowledge it, and maybe we can start to have honest conversations about how to stop paying women less than what we really deserve, because y'all know we deserve a whole hell of a lot more. And that's real talk right here on KBLA 1580 when we come forward.
Need legal help? Attorney Jovan Blacknell is an aggressive trial attorney specializing in criminal defense and civil litigation. Look no further than the law office of Jovan Blacknell. From personal injury to criminal defense, Jovan Blacknell has the knowledge to protect your rights. The law office of Jovan Blacknell understands the stress and anxiety that come with legal issues. That's why the law office of Jovan Blacknell supports the right to a fair trial. For Los Angeles Council member Mark Ridley Thomas, are you facing a legal battle? Log on to fightforjustice.com. Don't go through it alone. Let the law office of Jovan Blacknell fight for your rights. Log on to fightforjustice.com. Let the law office of Jovan Blacknell take the worry and stress out of your case. Call 310-469-9117 today for a free consultation. That's 310-469-9117 or log on to fightforjustice.com. Law office of Jovan Blacknell, where experience and dedication make the difference.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a whole lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. Today, I spoke with Tatiana, a community manager for JP Morgan Chase.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Tatiana Roberts. I am a community manager for JP Morgan Chase. I have to honestly say that this has been the most fulfilling position that I've ever had, where I get to give back to the community because I saw my mom's struggles. That's really what fuels what I do to make sure that that the community has all the access to the resources that my mother didn't have.
So for the mother who's in business, what are 3 quick tips you can give to ensure that they're on the right path to accessing financial support from a bank like Chase?
Say number 1, just make sure that you're checking your credit on a consistent basis and taking action to either fix your credit, maintain your credit, or rebuild your credit. The second thing would be budget. I know that B word is kind of like ugly for, right? A lot of people don't like that B word, but it has to be done. We need to tell our money where to go. The last thing is to build a network of supporters that are going to lift you up.
The community building here in Crenshaw is that network. So visit the Chase Community Center on Crenshaw and Vernon. Meet a banker today. Tell them about your business. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
The all-new Nissan Ariya is a fully loaded EV. It's brimming with style and power.
Up to 389 horses of it.
Innovation and intelligence.
E-Force all-wheel drive.
It'll pin you to your seat.
Your very plush seat.
The all-new, all-electric Nissan Areva. Nissan Areva with e-Force expected availability early 2023. E-Force cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. E-Force and 389 horsepower available on Platinum Plus. Nissan calculation using 1-foot rollout testing with long-range battery and e-Force only in Port mode with e-step off. These results are for comparison only and should not be attempted on public roads. Drive responsibly. See nissanusa.com for details.
Hi.
Who's this?
Buzz, he appears whenever you eat Honey Nut Cheerios.
Like a genie?
Sure.
Ooh, does he grant wishes? I wish I lived in a giant boot. No, I wish I could swim with a humpback whale. No.
I can grant you a delicious bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios, which can help lower cholesterol as part of a heart-healthy diet.
Ooh, with heart shapes, too.
Happy heart-shaped Cheerios are back for a limited time. Pick up a box of Honey Nut Cheerios at your local store for an easy, delicious, and
This is Areva Martin in real time. I'm your host, Areva Martin. And in this hour, I'm joined by Professor Calvin John Smiley. He's the author of Purgatory, Citizenship, Reentry, Race, and Abortion. Welcome back, Professor Smiley. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And joining us in this hour is University of Central Florida, Professor Larry Walker. Welcome back, Professor Walker.
Thanks for having me.
I always joke with you about being in Florida. I don't know how long you're going to be there. All kinds of crazy laws are being enacted that impact your ability to do your job as a professor. We're going to talk about that a little later. But I have a simple question for both of you. I'm going to start with you, Professor Smiley. How is your sneaker game, and is it on point?
I would say it's pretty good. You know, I got some ones, I got some sevens, I got some eights. If you don't know what I'm talking about Jordans, and I think that's where we're going with this. But yeah, I would say it's pretty top notch.
So you're not surprised then that these Jordan sneakers from this NBA game, they call it the last day, the last dance, this big game, $4 million they're expecting to get for those sneakers. Are you going to be, I guess I should ask you a more important question. Are you going to be bidding on these sneakers?
Yeah, as we say, I got 5 on it. It's incredible. I grew up watching Jordan. I was a fan of him as a child. Like many of my friends, we wanted Michael Jordan to be our father. Space Jam was the movie that I watched. But I mean, I think it just is telling of the incredible legacy that Michael Jordan has built, both as a player as well as a businessman, to create such a product that will surely outlive him and most likely live out all of us. I mean, this is a universal, iconic shoe that, is global and is really kind of baked into the culture. And, we have to think about the commercials that, Spike Lee directed when the shoe first came out. And it really made a lot of us think that we could fly.
Well, first of all, I got to apologize to you, Professor Smiley. I've been misstating the name of your book. It is actually Purgatory, Citizenship, Reentry, Race, and Abolition, not abortion. I think I have abortion on in mind because that big case that's happening in Texas today around abortion medication. So last word in your book is abolition, not abortion. So folks that are looking for it, make sure you are typing in the right words and forget what I said about abortion. But you're right, Professor Smiley, iconic. I don't even know if that's a big enough word because, as you know, Professor Walker, Michael Jordan didn't just dominate the basketball court in the 1980s and throughout the 90s. He became this cultural icon, as Professor Smiley said, a crossover star. I mean, literally and figuratively. And now, not only is the sneakers, there's a new movie coming out about him and his deal with Nike called Air. And what I find surprising about this movie is he's not in it, but it's the deal that he struck with Nike over this iconic sneakers. And so I should ask you, Professor Walker, are you going to be bidding on this shoe? You got your millions ready?
Listen, I don't have the capital, but I have some old Jordans. If they want to sell them, I have college tuition to pay for. So, let me know if they want some old Jordans. But, it's funny. My colleague, was talking about, reminiscing, and I'm old enough to remember when Jordan played for the Tar Heels. So this to be transparent. And so it's interesting because I also remember how Bird, Dr. J, and Magic Johnson kind of passed the baton to Michael Jordan. And listen, Jordans were iconic. I remember when they first dropped. And growing the time I was growing up in Philadelphia as a young person, and everybody wanted a pair of Jordans. My mother didn't pay for them because she said they were too expensive. But and also she didn't want to get it jumped. Also, I got to highlight that also. But Jordan is iconic, and now he's obviously a billionaire, and he set the template for LeBron James and some of these other, and Steph Curry and some of these other pro athletes that are focused on post career. So Jordan is the template in terms of not only is having your own sneaker, but in terms of being a athlete and transitioning to become a business person.
Well, I mean, not only is the shoe going, the shoes that he wore in that game going for up to what they think will be $4 million, the shoe is so iconic that it has its own movie. And a dream team of folks who are going to be in this movie. This movie Air, which is going to come out, I think, April of this year, is directed by Ben Affleck. It has Matt Damon in it, Jason Bateman, Viola Davis, Chris Tucker. I mean, you can't, really come up with a more impressive lineup. And the movie is really all about this, the sneaker deal. And there's no Jordan in the movie. So this sneaker is so significant that it has its own movie with, Hollywood royalty. Viola Davis is playing Michael Jordan's mother in the movie. I won't give away too much about it, but, we're going to be watching to see what happens with that movie, how well it does at the box office, as well as how much, those tennis shoes go for if they actually hit that 4 million and maybe go over, which is not that big of a deal because, again, like I said, last February, these shoes, Louis Vuitton and this collaborative, $25 million. So what kids pay for, and they're not just kids, grown men, obviously, too, and women. So it's not just a gender thing, but boy, I don't know if even Jordan could have imagined that he was not going to just change the game of basketball, but change the fashion industry as he was negotiating that deal. We're going to learn more about that in the movie. But I do want to talk about labor unions. Big win in Michigan, Professor Smiley, for labor unions. Talk to us about what it means to repeal the right to work law in a state like Michigan that we all, I think of as those unions that manufactured American-made cars for so many decades.
Yeah, I mean, unions are the foundation of the working class. I mean, without unions, we wouldn't have things like an 8-hour workday, workers' comp, sick days, minimum wage, being able to negotiate with the capitalists in the corporation. So unions are vital to the American workforce. And I think, things like the right to work is very misleading because it's, unions are not saying you can't work. Unions are actually in support of people working and making sure that you are compensated correctly if you're injured on the job, if you have medical expenses, if there's something that legally happens to you, they will be there to represent you. And so this kind of boogeyman bill that has, law that's now been repealed is an excellent move forward for workers in America.
And so we know that the Senate side of the House in Michigan has voted 20-17 to repeal this law. It's got to go back to the House, but the Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, has said for sure that she would sign it. Professor Walker, depending on which side you listen to, you get a different perspective about how significant it was back in 2012 when this right to work law was passed in Michigan. We know that at that time, Michigan had the 7th highest percentage of unionized workers. That dropped to, Michigan dropped to the 11th after that law was passed. But what do you believe happened? Were workers better off, as Professor Smiley said, under, union shops, or was there any, really big difference when you look at the right to work law that was enacted in 2012?
Yeah, so my colleague, Professor Smiley, outlined the importance of unions. So let me be clear. I'm a member of a faculty union. My father was a union man. I'm from Philadelphia, which is a very pro-union city. And now I'm in an anti-union state that is actually looking to get rid of the faculty unions in the state as we speak. So, yeah, obviously, in terms you talked about Michigan and their numbers, we know that Ford and these other manufacturing companies are located from Michigan and have been for decades. But unions make a huge difference in the lives of individuals, whether we talk about women pregnancy leave or, we talk about, minimum wage, fighting for a minimum wage, make sure, you have personal days, sick days. These are all because of unions advocating on behalf of working people. I think another caveat to this in terms of this change, it's important that there are laws in place that allow unions to talk to employers on behalf of employees. Because we know, my colleague talked about capitalism. Listen, it's cash rules of everything around me, right? So it's about making money off the backs of employers. So unions play a vital role, and I'm quite sure you'll see these numbers go up. But not only that, it will have an impact on the quality of life of individuals throughout the state of Michigan. I think that's the important thing to keep in mind.
We know that.
I'm also, I just want to say real quick, I'm also a union man. Shout out to PSC CUNY. And I also come from a mother who still is involved in her union, even in retirement. So, yes.
Well, I think we're all union members. I'm a union member myself. I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA, and that's a union that protects the rights of folks who work in the entertainment industry. And I can tell you, during COVID, the union was able to negotiate some of the most incredible healthcare prices. I mean, for a family my size, I have a family of 5, our healthcare prices were unbelievable. I mean, and the way the union was able to negotiate those prices. So unions do play a huge role in the lives of folks. There are 27 right-to-work states, and those right-to-work states doesn't mean they can't have unions. Unions can still organize in those states. It's just a question of whether they can require non-members to pay dues versus when you're in a union state or unionized state, all the workers pay those dues. But Professor Smiley, what do you think this is going to mean, if anything, as we look at 2024? Because we know unions play a huge role in organizing for political campaigns, particularly, big campaigns like presidential campaigns. Do you think this galvanizes some of those other states to look at repealing their right to work laws? And can it be a big issue in our 2024 presidential election?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's really important to see how the pendulum's now swinging back, right? There was this big push by conservatives and the right to kind of try to argue that unions were going to hurt you. And what actually happens is people can opt out of paying their union dues, but then are still protected by the unions. And so what all that happens is that the unions have less cash flow to protect you. So I think that this will be a huge issue going into 2024. And I'm optimistic that more places will see rolling back this kind of right to work legislation.
And I want to talk about reparations for a minute. Professor Walker, this recommendation by the California Reparations Task Force to create an agency, kind of like the Freedmen's Bureau that we saw coming out of slavery. Do you think it's a good idea, or is it redundant of other agencies that already exist?
If they're going to make sure black folks get paid, I'm all for it. And I think the history, when we talk about the Freedmen's Bureaus, remember General O. Howard was the commissioner of the Freedmen's Bureau. Howard University is named after, General Howard. But listen, if they're going to create a Freedmen's Bureau, we're going to make sure that people of African descent are adequately get the money they deserve from years of housing segregation, particularly in areas like the Bay Area, like there in San Francisco, and also issues also in terms of healthcare, in terms of discrimination from physicians. All these issues with years and years and years of Black folks have to deal with. I'm fine with that, as long as they put the money in the hands of the people. And like I said, there are various agencies, and also I think they're going to have this agency that needs to be properly funded. That's the other thing. We know how this game goes and say we're going to create this agency and you got 2 staffers there and they're overwhelmed. If you're going to have that kind of agency, you need to make sure you properly staff it and they have the equipment necessary to meet the needs of the community.
Professor Smiley, were you surprised at the reports that the San Francisco Board of Supervisors were enthusiastic in hearing this 100-point recommendation from the San Francisco Reparations Task Force? Because when the reports first came out, $5 million for each Black person in San Francisco, people were like, oh my God, as if, the world would end. And then some of the reports are saying the board members didn't say yes or no, so they didn't take a vote on it necessarily yesterday, but there wasn't as much outrage as I had anticipated.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you think about it, $5 million in the scheme of things is kind of a drop in the bucket when it comes to billionaires in this world. So I think, and then if we compound with interest, when we do hear often the kind of knee-jerk reaction of how can you give people free money, we have to reshape people's thinking, because it's not about giving free money, it's about compensation for free labor. And that is the whole point of reparations. And it will, be part of undoing, or at least trying to make a dent in structural violence that began with slavery and manifested and birthed racism that we are still seeing the effects of today. So I agree with my colleague, Dr. Walker, that, let's get these payments right into the hands of people directly. COVID showed us that we can do that, right? We can as a state, as a union, we can put direct deposits into people's accounts. Let's try to cut out some of those middlemen who, might be poverty pimps, and let's give people what they need.
Real quickly, Dr. Walker, some folks say money's not the solution. They make comparisons to the lottery. So you know what happens when people win millions of dollars in the lottery? You follow them for 10 years and they're often broke. That giving folks money won't solve systemic issues. What do you say to that?
I think they're thinking that Dave Chappelle skit when black people got reparations and, they walk around spending and calling white people poor. But let me just say that the bottom line is black folks have had to, scrape together nickels and dimes for generations. So we should absolutely
hold that thought for me. Hold that thought for me, Professor Walker. I'm going to let you finish it on the other side. When we come forward, the most comprehensive coverage of the federal bribery trial, United States versus Mark Ridley Thomas, with KBLA's justice correspondent, Dion Raymond. She's here to give us the inside of what happened today in the courtroom after some news, sports, and traffic right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of Areva in real time when we come forward.
I'm Julius White. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The American Red Cross is working around the clock in California as the state gets drenched by another soaking atmospheric river.
And so we are in regular communication with county emergency officials every day to anticipate needs.
Steve Walsh with Gold Country Red Cross says hundreds of volunteers are staging their response to the storm as millions face dangerous flooding.
If we can, we'll do what we call mobile feeding, which is basically bringing meals to the people at a centralized point if they can't get to, a grocery store.
Meantime, House Republicans moved forward with a congressional hearing at the U.S.-Mexico border today, despite the absence of Democrats. And in New York, Coldwell Banker is agreeing to pay $30,000 to settle discrimination claims as part of a settlement to stop the real estate brokerage's alleged discrimination against Black, Hispanic, and other home buyers of color on Long Island. I'm Julius White on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
In Laguna Niguel on the 5 southbound before you get to Crown Valley Parkway, the right lane is blocked with an accident. Looks like it is going to be stopped from at least La Paz Road. Also on the 5 northbound before La Paz Road, that earlier rock debris has cleared, but you're going to be seeing some slowing coming away from Avery Parkway. Also in Anaheim, 91 westbound after the 55, still got that crash blocking the fast track lane.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. If you're like many people, you may think custom blinds is a job for expensive professionals. Well, at Blindster, if you have a tape measure and a screwdriver, you can install our custom blinds and save big. Plus, we guarantee they'll fit. Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A statement game for the Clippers tonight when they host Golden State. Golden State is 7-26 on the road this season and has lost 8 straight away from home. If the Clippers want to be viewed as a serious contender for the Western Conference title, they need to continue Golden State's road miseries. Tip-off time is 7 on ESPN. Quarterback Baker Mayfield is moving on from the Rams after only 5 games with them last season. Mayfield is signing a 1-year deal with Tampa Bay for $8.5 million. Get your brackets filled out. March Madness officially tips off tomorrow. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by Original Taco Pete.
Aaron at Original Taco Pete's. Come in today for our tasty seasoned black taco. We're at 3272 West Slauson off Crenshaw, or call 323-348-4441.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates Women's History Month, sponsored by Walmart. As we celebrate Women's History Month this month, KBLA Talk 1580 would like to spotlight women leaders in our community who are creating positive change. If you or someone you know is making a difference in your community, please nominate them with a 50-word or less post on why you feel they should be included in the KBLA Women's Series, sponsored by Walmart. These women leaders will be featured on KBLA, interviewed on KBLA, and participate in a panel discussion hosted by Areva Martin in real time. Visit the KBLA app or log on to KBLA1580.com to nominate a woman in your community that is creating positive change. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
Our Weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited Black newspaper in the state of California, with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For your advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call Our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
Talk 1580 would like to thank all of the businesses that tune in to KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to lunch for 10, sponsored by John O'Groats family-owned restaurant and johnogroats.us. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to submit your office to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you're just like our staff, putting in many hard, smart working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA1580.com to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. Sponsored by John O'Groats family-owned restaurant and johnogroats.us. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
This is KBLA's exclusive coverage of the federal bribery trial involving LA City Council member Margaret Lee Thomas. And this is the second week of the trial. Our justice correspondent, Dion Raymond, is here for a recap. We know, Dion, that the prosecution has dubbed this a trial about power, privilege, and lies. They contend that Margaret Lee Thomas awarded contracts from the County of Los Angeles to the University of Southern California in exchange for his son, Sebastian, getting admitted to the university, receiving a scholarship from the university, and getting a job at the university. Now, from your excellent reporting, we also know that the defense has come out swinging, taking down several of the prosecution witnesses and create reasonable doubt as to the illegality of Margaret Lee Thomas's acts based on what the defense has called shoddy investigations and cherry picking of the facts. Now, I know that the prosecution has this theory of this case, but based on what you've been reporting, I say this is a case about innuendos, speculation, and misinformation. I'm getting reports, though, from the ground that today was not a particularly good day for the defense, as the government used an FBI agent to reinforce its theory of the case. That agent, I guess his name was Brian Atkins, was supposed to be the government's last witness, but in a surprise move, he actually testified today. So my first question for you is, how effective was this FBI agent who testified on behalf of the prosecution?
Well, Areva, first of all, that's a great recap. And in terms of his effectiveness, I'm going to say this. It remains to be seen, which with each witness that the prosecution has put on, once the defense comes back, they've had on their gloves, they've been able to do their job by punching holes. So thus far, I would say that he's been effective to the extent that, and here's my theme, the more things change, the more they stay the same, because what he did was he testified to evidence that they used to create a log to make a timeline of events. So the jury, in a very painfully and tedious way, had to hear all the things that we've heard already up to date.
Okay, so you mentioned this voluminous log that this agent went through on the witness stand today, testifying on behalf of the prosecution. Did the jurors learn anything new from this agent's testimony?
Not really, Areva. And from their demeanor, I would say that they were probably bored, but still respectful and paying attention. The one thing that they did highlight that was newer was that Sebastian Ridley Thomas had a public relations team to deal with non-public, unfounded sexual harassment allegations that arose at the height of the Me Too movement. And so we did hear some of that for the first time.
And so what is Sebastian's Ridley Thomas's use of a PR firm or crisis management firm? What does that have to do with the government's case against his father?
Well, they showed that his father, of course, Mark Ridley Thomas, was in the loop in these communications. And what they are suggesting to the jury is that this was a serious situation, that perhaps he really didn't resign because of health reasons, and that this was a creation of his Olivia Pope, fix-it team.
So I know, Dion, that this FBI agent that was on the witness stand pretty much all of today didn't get to finish his direct testimony and is expected to be back on that witness stand tomorrow. What do you expect the defense to do? This defense team has been, on the case, has been taking down witnesses, really taking numbers. What do you expect tomorrow to see from this defense team?
Areva, I think they're going to be consistent and do what they've been doing all along. They have a good command of the facts, and they are very nimble in terms of pulling up documents to impeach and to refresh recollection. I think they're going to keep their gloves on. I think they're going to continue to poke those holes. And I think they're going to continue to deal with this in a way that they know that they cannot rope-a-dope, because they're dealing with a Goliath-like government that has unlimited resources and that has those kind of advantages, particularly having an FBI agent sitting at counsel table with them, who has the advantage of testifying after he's heard the testimony of all the witnesses who have come before him.
And not to mention this FBI agent, we should talk about this, briefly. They have text messages, voicemail messages, emails, medical records, financial records, bank records. So there is no limit to what the FBI can get when they are, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office and prosecuting the case. So everything you say, everything you memorialize, it can show up in a courtroom if you find yourself in this situation. But real quickly, who's next for the prosecution? We know they're supposed to finish their case by Friday of this week. Doesn't look like they're on track to do that. But what is the next, or who is the next witness you think the prosecution will call after the cross-examination of this agent?
Yeah, what we know, Areva, is that they're going to call a county director who was part of these emails and communications during the time that this matter was investigated.
And big question for the day. I ask you every day. You've been giving me some sometimes surprising responses, but who won the day?
I'm giving the day to the jury just for being able to stay awake and to be respectful and to pay attention and continue to take notes. It's going to the jury today.
All right. Well, that's a big plus for our judicial system because you're right. Jurors are, tasked with a pretty big job. Most of them are not lawyers. If you're a lawyer, you're not likely to be on a jury for a case like this. So let's give it up for the jurors today. Thank you for your insights, Dion. I know you will be back inside that courtroom tomorrow with more gavel-to-gavel coverage of the trial, United States of America versus Mark Ridley Thomas. Always appreciate your perspective. And we will see you back here same time tomorrow. When we come forward, more trending news and analysis with Professor Calvin John Smiley and University of Central Florida Professor Larry Walker, right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut broke records opening weekend. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Lendistry. The highly anticipated Creed 3 premiered in theaters early March. The film is Michael B. Jordan's first time directing and starring in a film. Creed 3 is the third movie of the successful franchise. Not only has it broken global opening weekend records, earning over $100 million worldwide, but it's also the biggest opening ever for a Black director in their directorial debut. It was also the biggest opening weekend of all Creed movies.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, lendistry.com/KBLA today.
Law Office of Jay Blacknell understands the stress and anxiety that comes with legal issues. That's why we support the right to a fair trial for Los Angeles Councilmember Mark Ridley Thomas. Do you have a criminal or civil rights matter? If so, please give us a call at 310-469-9117.
The U.S. premiere of the official Bob Marley One Love Experience has arrived in Los Angeles. Open now through April 23rd at Ovation Hollywood on the corner of Hollywood and Highland. The 15,000 square foot immersive experience opens up the world of Bob Marley like never before and features the entire Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Bob Marley archive. A One Love force that takes fans on a trip to Jamaica in a multi-sensory environment, a silent disco that lets fans groove out to a curated playlist, previously unseen photos, and rare memorabilia, exclusive art from Mr. Brainwash, The Postman, Camo Works, and Idiot Box, and can't miss photo ops. Don't miss the opportunity to celebrate one of the world's most beloved and unifying musical figures. Tickets start at $20 plus fees and are available at BobMarleyEXP.com. That's BobMarleyEXP.com. Get your tickets today.
California is a great place to live and work, but those aren't easy things to do for students also going to college. That's why the state created the Californians for All College Corps, a way for students to build skills and help others while earning up to $10,000 for school. Commit to serve your community and we'll help you pay for college. Spots will fill up fast, so learn more and apply today at www.cacollegecorps.com. That's www.cacollegecorps.com. California is a great place to live and work, but those aren't easy things to do for students also going to college. That's why the state created the Californians for All College Corps, a way for students to build skills and help others while earning up to $10,000 for school. Commit to serve your community and we'll help you pay for college. Spots will fill up fast, so learn more and apply today at www.cacollegecorps.com. That's www.cacollegecorps.com.
KBLA Talk 1580 welcomes the U.S. premiere of the Bob Marley One Love Experience. Open now through April 23rd at Ovation in Hollywood. Enter to win a pair of VIP tickets on the KBLA app or KBLA1580.com. A One Love Experience poster, vinyl record, and souvenir. This has been a community call to action brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm back with more trending news and analysis with Professor Calvin John Smiley, author of Purgatory, Citizenship, Reentry, Race, and Abolition. And University of Central Florida, Professor Larry Walker is here. And Professor Walker, before we had our justice correspondent on. You were talking about a skit involving Dave Chappelle about reparations. Okay.
Yeah, so I think the Chappelle Show is on Netflix, but one of his I guess well-known skits involves Black people getting reparations and kind of them following around and Black people just waving money and taking money at an ATM machine. And the idea that what happened if Black folks actually got reparations. Obviously, it's comedy and it's a bit of levity. But I highlighted that because I know some people have seen who are listening and watching have seen that skit. But I think it's really important to keep in mind is what I was point I was making earlier is that Black people for generations have had to really scrape together pennies, nickels, and dimes to pay the electric bill, to pay the phone bill, to keep food on the table. So the idea that they can't responsibly, spend money that they deserve in the first place, I think, in my opinion, really reinforces stereotypes and misconceptions. Black folks know how to properly use money. We just don't always have the opportunity to build capital.
Yeah, it's kind of a form of financial bullying. It's like, if you owe me money and you give it to me, what I do with it is no longer your business. Just give me my money and let me do with it whatever I will. And if I want to throw it up in the sky or go to Vegas and gamble, that is my prerogative, because we know white folks with money have been able to do whatever they want to do with their money. And if we choose to build generational wealth, which I think most will if they are afforded an opportunity, we'll have an opportunity to do that in ways that we haven't. But we have some breaking
just real
news.
Quick on that, it's like going back to the Chappelle Show skit. One of the things that I think is often underrated in that skit is how Chappelle is not only poking fun at this stereotype, so he's really making fun of white people, but he also highlights how when Black folks are given the reparations, one of the jokes is that that we fix the financial crisis of America by spending that money. So it's really a joke on folks who would actually believe these stereotypical tropes. I just want to say that. Sorry.
No, that's important. No, and feel free to jump in. A very important point. Yes, and we know if you give folks $5 million, we are going to generate that dollar is going to turn over and over and over, and hopefully it'll turn over in Black communities, and Black businesses will benefit as a result. Just as an aside, now that you mentioned that, the reparations program in Evanston, where they are giving $25,000 housing grants for folks who were the victims of redlining in Evanston during a certain period in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they didn't make any stipulation about how those grantees could spend that $25,000. And one of the things that they have found is that money didn't stay in the Black community, and they were hoping that Black homeowners that got the grants would use it that way. So they're looking at ways how to make sure that, and you can't, again, dictate what people do with the money, but they do want to try to enhance and support Black carpenters and construction workers and, contractors in that community. So this reparations question is very complex, obviously, and just glad to see San Francisco jumping out front on it. But a piece of breaking news: former Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti has been confirmed as U.S. ambassador to India. And Democrats, Professor Walker, are pissed. He got confirmed with 3 Democratic senators voting against him and Republican senators standing up saying, let's get this done. We need an ambassador. Let's get Eric Garcetti confirmed. What do you make of this long process that involves some very unusual behavior on the part of Garcetti, his mama, his daddy, and his whole family? But Democrats are pissed, not Republicans.
Yeah, you said that's breaking, and I saw that. It's very interesting. And I've talked before that I worked on Capitol Hill, and sometimes you get surprises like this that are rare. And I'm really curious I understand why Democrats are upset, but I'm curious to the Republicans. Like you said, India is one of is one of the most, not only populous, but important in terms of economically in the world. So I get the importance of having an ambassador. But as you said, this has been going for a while. And I thought that they were just going to drop out and have someone else try to get the ambassadorship, but that didn't happen. But I'm curious to what the Republicans, who are typically not willing to offer a helping hand when it comes to anyone who is not a right-wing Republican. and this particularly, like I said, as it relates to the Senate. So I'm curious to what some of the thoughts and ideas were some of the Republican members of the U.S. Senate. It's interesting, though.
Well, we know, Professor Smiley, the rumor mill is very busy and the Twitter sphere is very busy, and everything from conspiracies involving Eric Garcetti cutting backroom deals with Republicans, rumors that he has agreed to get his Republican friends to support Republican candidates, to do fundraising. I mean, Twitter is busy. What do you make of these three Democratic senators, Hirano, Brown, and Kelly, voting no? And Mark Kelly coming out saying, look, we felt pressure. We felt pressure by the Eric Garcetti team. We felt like we were being strong-armed into a vote, and we had questions. And we don't like, as U.S. senators, being strong-armed by anybody, even someone who's, a lifelong Democrat. What are you hearing about how Garcetti was able to get Republican votes and didn't get 3 Democratic votes?
Yeah, as they always say, just as many deals happen on the golf course as they do in the boardroom. So, who knows who he's been talking to and what, as you mentioned, Areva, promises were made. He also had that other scandal in his camp where there had been some sexual misconduct, not from him himself, but from others in his camp that also might give pause for some folks to want to vote someone in like that. Because again, while it might not be him, what kind of culture is he cultivating within his constituents? I think one of the things that we've seen for the last couple of years is that Republicans vote red no matter what. Democrats don't do that. Democrats, while they have their own issues, and we can talk about that, they clearly don't just vote party line because, the magical hat told them to. So, I see that happening as a kind of a differing than the Republican Party. And, my thing is, I'm not an expert on U.S. ambassadorships and who gets it and all that kind of stuff. But, I'm also really interested in understanding what is his resume with the South Asian community, with the country of India. Does he know what he's actually stepping into, or is this simply a favor towards him because he's going to pay people back in other ways?
Well, you mentioned the sexual harassment claims that were made against one of his staffers. And again, let's be clear, nothing against Eric Garcetti. But he got involved in this because there were some who said he lied under oath about what he knew about the sexual harassment allegations. And there are some tweets out there where folks are saying, look, this is a very ugly vote, no matter how you look at it. And they are thanking the woman, the whistleblower that came forward for speaking out fearlessly, some say, on the issue for a long time. And so I don't know, Professor Walker. How does Biden spin this? He stood behind Eric Garcetti. Eric Garcetti was one of his campaign co-managers when he ran for president. They've been apparently pretty close, but Eric Garcetti's family, pretty wealthy family, hired lobbyists to lobby for this position. And folks were like, well, wait a minute, that's not how ambassadorships, and you worked on the Hill. You don't typically have lobbyists lobbying, the party's senators to get someone appointed in a position like this. Usually it's this much drama around an appointment of an ambassador. So what's going on Capitol Hill with this appointment?
Yeah, so I think one of the things to keep in mind is about these ambassadorships, it is usually almost 99% of the time people with power and clout. If you remember in terms of Kennedy's, one of the Kennedys was as a ambassador. Johnson, who's the owner of the New York Jets, I think during the Obama administration, was a U.S. ambassador. This is all about political connections and power and money. So actually, he's got the power and money which intersect, which actually makes a lot of sense. Now, listen, Professor Smiley made a really good point about his relationship with the Southeast Asian community. India is a power broker on the world stage. So this is not just some small island somewhere off the coast of some continent where he's an U.S. ambassador. India plays a very pivotal role in not only in terms of economically, but also in terms of sometimes they play a middleman often with other countries. So it's very interesting, but it once again highlights the democratic political machine, let's be frank here, but also in terms of having money and resources when it comes to family and also your former political career.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the importance of India as a country and its importance to the U.S. And we know that Eric Garcetti briefly ran for president, thought about running for president, that he's ambitious. He's a young guy. He's young in political terms. He's 52 years old. There's nowhere to go right now in the state of California after he was mayor because we already have a Democratic governor. We have 2 Democratic senators. So when you get through being the mayor of a big city like Los Angeles and you want to stay in public office, you got to figure out what to do, right? What office is available? And we know being the ambassador to a country like India will give him some international bona fides that will be helpful to his resume if he does decide to run for president or if there's an opportunity to be on the presidential ticket as a vice president. So being an ambassador is often, as you said, more than just about wanting to serve your country, not to suggest that he doesn't want to serve his country. The guy was mayor of 2 terms in the city of Los Angeles. And by some accounts, some people thought he was a pretty good mayor. He's a good guy. I like the guy. I have nothing against him personally. But we should be clear that most of the folks that want these positions want them because they are stepping stones to something else. We've got to leave it there. Thank you so much, Professor Smiley. Arthur, I got to keep saying this book because I got to get it right again. Purgatory, Citizenship, Reentry, Race, and Abolition. I'm going to say it every time I get an opportunity to do so. Thank you, University of Central Florida, Professor Larry Walker. Always a pleasure to see both of you. Brilliant analysis, as always, and hope to see you back real soon. All right, in hour 2, when we come forward, it's a proposed new law enforcement training facility outside of Atlanta is under fire. Hundreds of protesters have descended on the facility, and on Sunday, a fiery clash with police resulted in 23 protesters being arrested and charged with, get this, domestic terrorism. When we come forward, my experts weigh in on what does it mean? Is this a really, good thing for the community to have a training facility that says it's going to focus on community policing, or like protesters are contending, is this about providing more opportunities to militarize our law enforcement agencies? And is domestic terrorism really, these are very serious felonies. Are these charges, is this, a lot to do about nothing? And I don't want to suggest it's nothing if you throw bricks at law enforcement, but it appears that there's some overreach with respect to these charges. So after some news, sports, and traffic, we're going to break down what community policing really is, what it isn't, how this training facility could be a help to the whole concept of community policing, or perhaps a hindrance, and what these domestic terrorism charges mean for protesters, right here on KBLA Talk 1580.